chosen one. Stop right here. This moment is not random. Heaven itself has stepped into your timeline and interrupted you. You were not scrolling aimlessly, you were led here. This is a divine pause, a holy interruption, because God refuses to let you drift further away from His voice. You know this stirring. Those nights you couldn't sleep, replaying memories that pierced deeper than you wanted to admit. Those days you smiled on the outside, but felt hollow inside. You thought it was coincidence, or maybe just anxiety. No, it was the Lord knocking at your heart, saying, "Listen to me before it's too late." And now, the knocking has turned into a thunderclap. Let me tell you about a man who once walked this same path. He felt overlooked while others advanced. He watched friends celebrate new chapters while his life seemed frozen. For years, he carried anger toward God, thinking he had been forgotten. But one day, when his season finally shifted, he realized the truth. God had been protecting him from doors that would have destroyed him. The waiting wasn't rejection, it was preservation. That interruption was grace disguised. And now, the same grace is reaching for you. Right now, you are standing where two paths divide. One is wide, full of noise and distraction, but it ends in emptiness. The other is narrow, quiet, and often lonely, but it leads to glory. You cannot stand in between forever. Heaven is calling you to choose, because delay itself is dangerous. Think of it like a ship at sea. If the captain ignores even a 1-degree error on the compass, the vessel will eventually end up on the wrong continent. Ignoring God's interruption works the same way. You may not see the danger immediately, but little by little, your entire destiny drifts off course. That is why the interruption is mercy. Another image. Picture an old key left unused. Rust slowly, eating away its shine. If it is never restored and turned in the lock, it becomes useless. Your calling is that key. If ignored long enough, its sharpness dull, and doors meant for you remain shut. God's voice is here today to stop the corrosion and awaken what was placed in you. The truth is this: the enemy has known all along that you are chosen. That is why your storms have been heavier. That is why rejection clung to you like a shadow, not because you are weak, but because you carry a crown that darkness fears. The problem is, you haven't seen it yet. And once you do, everything changes. The ancient words recorded in Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19, thunder with relevance today. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life. This is not about tomorrow, not about when you feel ready. It is about now. Choose life. Choose obedience. Choose the path God is pressing into your spirit at this very moment. So here is your prophetic act. If you know this interruption was for you, declare it publicly. Type the number 444 inches, the comments. That number will be your sign of agreement with heaven that you choose life. You choose the narrow path. You choose to answer God's voice. Share this message so another chosen one may awaken from their sleep. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss the voice of God breaking into your life again. This interruption is not a mistake. It is your moment. The trumpet blast in your spirit, the alarm clock of heaven. Do not silence it. Do not ignore it. This is God's mercy, giving you another chance to choose life. You have felt it since childhood, the sense that you never quite fit into the patterns others seemed so comfortable with. While friends blended in easily, you were marked by a subtle difference, a weight, and sometimes even a loneliness that words could not explain. That is not because you were broken or defective. It is because you were chosen. The truth is, being set apart often feels like rejection. You prayed for acceptance but found closed doors. You longed for companionship yet felt misunderstood. Every tear you shed in secret. Every night you wrestled with questions. All of it was evidence that heaven placed a seal upon you before you could speak your first word. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart, appointed as prophet to nations. That word still reverberates into your own life. The separation you have experienced is not punishment, it is identity. Imagine a craftsman working with precious metal. Ordinary stones are tossed in bulk, but gold is refined differently. It is pulled out, handled with care, and passed through fire, so the impurities fall away. That process is uncomfortable, but it proves value. You are that gold. Your struggles have not been random, they have been fire shaping purity. There was once a young man who carried this mark of difference. Growing up, he tried to walk like everyone else, but everywhere he went, he drew opposition. Teachers said he was too intense. Friends said he was too serious. He learned to laugh along, but deep down, he wondered why he could not be normal. Years later, when he stepped into leadership, he realized all those traits were exactly what God had formed in him for influence. What felt like rejection was protection. What felt like isolation was cultivation. And so it has been with you. When people left, it was not because you were unworthy. It was because God refused to let the wrong voices shape your future. When opportunities slipped away, it was not because you lacked talent. It was because the assignment attached to your name could not be fulfilled in those places. Think about the story of David. Before he was crowned king, he was hidden in fields, forgotten even by his own father when Samuel came searching. Yet it was in those lonely fields that he learned how to worship, how to fight lions and bears, how to trust God when no one else was watching. His rejection positioned him for destiny, and yours has too. Like a seed buried underground, you have felt unseen. But burial is not the end, it is the beginning of growth. In silence and darkness, roots spread, strength develops, and when the time is right, the seed breaks the surface. People think it appeared overnight, but heaven knows it was years in the making. That is your story. Hiddenness is not abandonment, it is incubation. So, chosen one, remember this, you were marked long before you knew. Every setback, every delay, every lonely season, they are all proof that God has been guarding you like treasure. You have not been disqualified. You have been preserved. And soon, what was hidden will be revealed for the glory of the one who marked you from the very beginning. There are battles you have carried silently. Battles no one around you fully understood. They weren't just emotional struggles or random hardships. They were evidence of the invisible war raging over your life. You have felt resistance without reason, weight without explanation, and storms that seem to rise, The moment you took one step closer to God. These are not coincidences. They are hidden battles. Scripture reminds us in the letter of Paul to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." The warfare you felt is proof that your presence disrupts darkness. That sense of heaviness when you try to pray, that sudden opposition right after you make a righteous decision, those are not accidents. They are pushback. Because light cannot rise without darkness trembling. Imagine a torch lit in a cave. The deeper you go, the more shadows gather and try to press against the light. But the flame doesn't diminish, it exposes what has been hiding all along. That's your life. Your very existence reveals what the enemy wants to keep concealed. That is why you've carried invisible pressure most people never experience. There was a woman who once shared her story of hidden battles. She said that every time she tried to step into something new, whether a job, a relationship, or a new discipline with God, strange resistance rose up, unexpected delays, misunderstandings, doors that seemed to close without reason. For years she thought she was cursed, but as she drew closer to the Lord, she realized she wasn't cursed, she was called. The resistance wasn't proof of God's absence, but proof of His hand upon her. The more she pressed forward, the more she realized the battle is not a sign of weakness, but of worth. And that is true for you as well. If you were ordinary, you wouldn't attract extraordinary resistance. If you had nothing valuable inside you, darkness wouldn't waste its energy trying to wear you down. The warfare is confirmation. You are chosen, you are marked, and you are dangerous to the enemy. Think of it this way. A thief doesn't break into empty houses. He goes where treasure is stored. The fact that hell has been fighting you so hard means there is treasure within you. Gifts, callings, influence, seeds of greatness. And the enemy wants them buried. But here is the promise. Hidden battles do not last forever. What is hidden will one day be shouted from the rooftops. What has been fought for in silence will one day bear fruit in the open. The pressure you feel is shaping strength you don't yet realize you carry. And now, I want you to take a bold step. Comment below, "I am awake." End of. Why those words? Because every hidden battle tries to lull you into spiritual sleep, convincing you that surrender is easier than standing. But when you write it, "I am awake," you declare that you are no longer sleeping through destiny, no longer ignoring the signs, no longer tolerating chains in silence. You are awake. And when a chosen one awakens, hell trembles. This declaration is not just words, it is a prophetic act, a visible sign that you reject the enemy's lie and embrace heaven's truth. There comes a point when God's patience, though abundant, begins to press upon you with urgency. Mercy has carried you farther than you realize, shielding you from consequences that could have destroyed you. But the Spirit whispers now, "Do not mistake my patience for permission." The window of grace is real, but it is not endless. You have known moments when conviction struck your heart. Perhaps you felt the gentle nudge telling you not to go down a certain path, not to send that message, not to make that compromise. Sometimes you listened, but other times you silenced the voice and pushed forward anyway. And yet you were spared. That sparing was mercy. The prophet Hosea spoke to a people who kept testing God's patience. He warned them that rebellion, if repeated without repentance, leads to a hardening of the heart. That same truth speaks to you today. God has been kind, but his kindness is meant to lead you to transformation, not to give you license to drift. Think about a potter shaping clay on the wheel. As long as the clay is soft, the potter can press, adjust, and reshape. But if the clay hardens before it is ready, it cannot be molded. It must be broken. That is the danger of ignoring conviction too long. The heart that once felt every whisper becomes numb, and numbness is more dangerous than weakness. There was once a man who lived in cycles of delay, had felt conviction, promised God he would change, but always postponed. He said, "Tomorrow I'll be serious." But tomorrow never came. Over time, the voice that once stirred him grew faint, not because God stopped speaking, but because his ears adjusted to the silence he chose. And by the time he wanted to respond, the weight of missed seasons pressed heavily on him. His story is a warning. Grace should never be taken for granted. Scripture records in the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 3, verse 15, "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion." End quote. The word "today" is not casual. It is urgent. It reminds us that obedience cannot be scheduled for a more convenient season. Every time you delay, you risk missing a moment designed to shape your destiny. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, fog surrounding you. You cannot see the depth, but a hand suddenly pulls you back. You breathe, realizing one more step and you would have fallen. That unseen pull that was mercy. But if you ignore the pull and keep stepping forward, there comes a point where even mercy cannot stop gravity. Your life has been filled with divine interruptions, close calls, and rescues you didn't even know you needed. How many times were you spared when others weren't? How many times did danger pass by your door? Not because of chance, but because of God's mercy covering you. But hear this truth: mercy is not weakness. Mercy is opportunity. It is God's invitation to align with his will before the consequences of rebellion take root. Mercy waits, but it does not wait forever. So, understand this moment. If you feel the weight of conviction stirring inside you, do not brush it aside. This is not condemnation. It is grace knocking at your door. It is proof that God still pursues you, still loves you, still believes in what he placed within you. But he is urging you, do not harden your heart. Let this be the day you respond. There is something you need to understand about your very presence in this world. It unsettles darkness. You often underestimate yourself, thinking you are weak, fragile, or insignificant. But when you walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts. You have carried a light that makes demons nervous, even when you were unaware of it. The mark of God upon your life made the unseen realm tremble. It explains why opposition has followed you, why envy rose up against you even when you did nothing to provoke it, why certain people seemed uncomfortable around you for no clear reason. The truth is, they weren't reacting to your personality, but to your presence. Light exposes what darkness prefers to hide. And the light in you has been shining since the day God set you apart. The Apostle Paul reminds us in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 6, "For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness. Made his light shine in our hearts, to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory, displayed in the face of Christ. This light is not borrowed, it is planted deep within you, and it is not fragile. Even in your moments of failure, the flame has not gone out. That is why the enemy works overtime to make you doubt yourself, to silence your voice, to bury your gift. But he cannot extinguish what heaven has ignited. Imagine walking through a valley at night, carrying a single lantern. The shadows stretch long, but every step you take pushes back the darkness. That is you, with every choice to stand firm, with every word of truth you speak. You push back what the enemy wanted to use to swallow you. I remember the story of a young woman who always felt ordinary. She struggled with insecurity, constantly comparing herself to others. Yet people often told her, "I feel peace when I'm around you." She brushed it off, thinking it was nothing. Years later, she finally realized it wasn't her natural charm. It was the Spirit of God within her. Her very presence disrupted the heaviness others carried, because light was breaking through her life. That is what you carry too. This is why the call on your life matters. You are not only surviving battles, you are meant to be a torch in the hands of God. Your life is a flame that others will gather around for warmth, direction, and hope. And while you may feel small, the fire in you is part of a greater blaze. Heaven is igniting across the earth. And here is where I ask something of you, not as a demand, but as an invitation. Think of your light like a candle. A candle alone can only shine so far. But when candles are placed side by side, their flames join, and the darkness has no chance. When you choose to connect, when you like, when you share, when you subscribe, you are placing your flame among many, creating a fire that cannot be hidden. So, if you sense that your light has meaning beyond yourself, let your flame be seen. Share this message as though you were passing a torch to someone still walking in shadows. Subscribe, not because you are told, but because you choose to stay connected with the flame that keeps you burning. Like this, as your simple act of placing one more spark into the wildfire. This is not pressure, it is beauty. A gathering of chosen ones, each carrying their spark, until the whole horizon is lit. Your presence terrifies darkness, your obedience multiplies light. And together, our candles become a wildfire of glory. There is a moment in every journey where everything narrows down to a single choice. You feel it in your spirit right now. The tension between destiny and delay, between obedience and compromise, has brought you to an edge, and heaven is watching to see what you will decide. Your whole life has been building to this crossroads. Every hardship, every delay, every unanswered question has prepared you for this moment. But preparation only matters if you act when the moment arrives. God is not asking for endless promises about tomorrow. He is calling you to one decision today. The Apostle James wrote these sobering words in chapter 4, verse 17. If anyone, then, knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. End quote. That is a heavy truth. It means indecision itself can become disobedience. To know the right path but delay, walking in it, is to silently agree with the enemy. You may not have bowed down to idols or cursed God with your lips, but procrastination is rebellion, dressed politely. Think of it like standing at a train platform. The doors are open. The conductor calls out, and you know This is your train. Yet you hesitate, telling yourself, I'll take the next one. But what if no next one comes? What if this was the train carrying you to the very place your spirit has been crying out for? That is the weight of spiritual hesitation. I remember hearing the story of a man who always said he would surrender later. He planned to commit after his career stabilized, after his family was secure, after his schedule lightened, but after never arrived. One crisis after another consumed his life until he looked back and realized decades had passed. The opportunity to walk boldly with God had been lost to endless waiting. His story stands as a warning. Delayed obedience becomes disobedience. And yet this is not meant to crush you, but to awaken you. Conviction is proof of God's love. The very fact that you feel the weight of this moment means the door has not yet closed. Mercy is still here, holding the train doors open, urging you to step inside. Another picture. Imagine a field ready for harvest. The stalks of grain are tall, golden, bending under the weight of abundance. But harvest does not wait forever. If the reapers delay, the stalks rot, and the opportunity is gone. Your life is that harvest. This is the hour to reap what God has prepared. Not later, not someday, but now. And so, I invite you to mark this moment, not with empty words, not with vague promises, but with a visible declaration. Comment below the number 555. Let it be your prophetic act, your way of saying, I choose alignment. I choose obedience. I will not delay what heaven is asking of me. Why 555? Because it speaks of grace multiplied, grace covering past mistakes, grace that empowers future obedience. When you type it, you're not just entering numbers, you're declaring that grace is enough to pull you out of hesitation and into destiny. This is your decision point. No more later. No more waiting for perfect conditions. You are one step away from alignment, one choice away from stepping into the season heaven has written for you. The fire you carry is not ordinary. It was never meant to be a flicker, easily extinguished by the winds of life. It is a flame planted deep within your spirit, breathed there by God Himself. From the moment you were marked as chosen, that fire became a weapon both for your protection and for the shaking of darkness around you. Yet carrying fire is not comfortable. You have felt its heat in your bones. It burns against complacency, pressing you forward when you wanted to settle. It refuses to let you remain lukewarm, even when comfort seems more attractive. The fire of God within you is both gift and burden, both warmth and weight. The prophet Jeremiah described this experience in his own life. He said the word of the Lord was like fire shut up in his bones. He tried to keep silent, but he could not. The fire consumed him until he released what God had given. That same pressure, that same holy flame, is why you cannot blend in or remain quiet when everything inside you cries out to live differently. Consider the image of a forge. Metal is placed into flames until it glows, softened and reshaped into something stronger. Without fire, the weapon cannot be formed. Without fire, the sword cannot cut. You are that metal, and the heat you feel in your trials is God's forge. Every hardship, every season of pressing has been about shaping you into a vessel that carries power. There was once a young leader who felt overwhelmed by the weight of calling. Every setback made him question if he was really chosen. But when he looked back, he realized something powerful. The same fire that burned away his pride also gave him courage. The same seasons that stripped away false friends also purified his voice. He learned that the fire was not his enemy, it was his training. The Apostle Peter echoes this truth in his first letter. Chapter 1, verse 7. These trials will show that your faith is genuine. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold. Your fire is evidence of value. Trials do not come to destroy you, they come to prove you. Gold is not threatened by fire, it is revealed by it. In the same way, the battles you've walked through are revealing the strength God planted in you long ago. Think also of a lighthouse. In calm weather, its beam feels unnecessary, but when storms crash against the shore, that light becomes the difference between safety and shipwreck. The fire in you is like that light. It shines brightest when the world around you grows dark. And though storms rage, your flame has endured. Do not despise the fire. Do not wish it away. It is proof you are alive. Proof you are chosen. Proof that God has trusted you with something weighty. The enemy fears that fire because he knows once you fully embrace it, you will not only endure, you will ignite others. So carry it boldly. Let the fire burn. What feels heavy today will soon become the very thing that lights the path for generations after you. And when that fire spreads, it will not be limited to you alone. It will awaken hearts, break chains, and call forth destinies that were long asleep. Delay is one of the most subtle weapons the enemy uses. Rarely does darkness tempt you with obvious destruction first. Instead, it whispers, "You have time. Wait until tomorrow. Wait until you feel stronger. Wait until everything lines up." And in that delay, precious opportunities are lost. You have felt this before. The stirring in your heart to act, to step into something greater. Yet hesitation held you back. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and suddenly, what once felt urgent faded into background noise. That is the hidden danger of delay. It dulls the sharpness of conviction until you forget what once set your heart on fire. Scripture reveals in the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 12, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. When you delay too long, your own heart begins to ache. The weight of unfulfilled callings, of neglected obedience, does not fade away, it grows heavier. Delay is not neutral. It slowly drains passion until you wonder if you ever had a calling in the first place. Consider the image of a garden left unattended. At first, the weeds are small, barely noticeable, but day by day, they spread until the flowers that once bloomed so beautifully are strangled. The soil hasn't changed, it still carries life, but neglect has allowed what is unwanted to take over. Delay works the same way. What you fail to tend, you slowly lose. There was once a man who carried a clear vision from God. He knew what he was supposed to build. And at first, he worked with excitement. But as obstacles rose, he told himself he would resume later. Days of pause became years of stagnation. By the time he tried to return, the people who were meant to build alongside him had scattered. The vision still mattered, but the window had shifted. His story is a sobering reminder. Delay has a cost. And yet, Not all waiting is delay. There is a difference between God's appointed seasons of preparation and the enemy's trap of procrastination. One strengthens you, the other weakens you. One is anointed, the other is dangerous. The challenge is to discern which one you are living in. Think about David once more. When Samuel anointed him, he did not step into kingship immediately. Years passed, but that waiting was purposeful. It was shaping him. He fought battles, built character, and learned trust. That was God's preparation, not delay. But imagine if David had ignored his calling altogether, telling himself it wasn't real, or it wasn't urgent. He would never have stepped into the throne. Waiting has a holy place, but procrastination kills purpose. Imagine a runner at the starting line. The gun sounds, but he hesitates, watching others launch forward. The track is still there, but every second of delay makes the race harder. That is how destiny works. The longer you wait, the more you have to fight just to catch up to where you should already be. Do not underestimate the quiet poison of delay. It rarely announces itself loudly. It sneaks in through comfort, distraction, and the illusion of more time. But heaven is sounding the alarm. Every moment matters. The seeds of greatness planted in you cannot sit dormant forever. And when that seed finally breaks through, it must not be weakened by hesitation. It must rise with strength, courage, and clarity. Because destiny delayed too long becomes destiny lost forever. There are moments in life when the voice of God becomes impossible to ignore. You've seen signs that felt too precise to be coincidence. A repeated number on a clock, a phrase spoken by a stranger that pierced your heart, a door closing that you thought should stay open. These are not accidents, they are prophetic awakenings. Ways heaven reaches through the noise to remind you are not wandering without direction. It is written in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 27. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. That is what has been happening to you. The whispers, the confirmations, the stirring that won't let go. They are evidence that you are not abandoned in confusion, but pursued by a shepherd who knows you by name. The prophetic voice of God often comes not in thunder, but in patterns, moments, and reminders tailored exactly for you. Think about a traveler in a foreign land who doesn't understand the language, lost, overwhelmed, and unsure where to turn. Suddenly, he hears his own native tongue spoken in the crowd. Instantly, he feels a connection, a sense of belonging. That's what happens when God speaks into your life. Amidst all the noise, His voice cuts through with clarity, reminding you, "You are mine." I recall the story of a young man who wrestled with doubt for years. He asked for signs, and often dismissed them as coincidence. But one season, the number 40 kept appearing on receipts, in dreams, in conversations. Finally, he realized God was pointing to a time of testing and preparation, just as Israel endured 40 years in the wilderness. The pattern wasn't random, it was revelation. That recognition awakened him to lean into prayer, and his entire walk with God deepened. These awakenings are not meant to scare you, they are meant to guide you. Numbers, visions, unexpected words God uses, what will reach you. Prophetic moments are markers on the road, ensuring you don't drift too far from your assignment. Think of them like lighthouse beams sweeping across a dark sea. A sailor could ignore them, thinking they're just flashes of light. But to the attentive, they mean safety, direction, and life. So too with the signs in your life. They are heaven's signal that you are not lost, that the path is still before you. But here's the challenge. Will you treat them as random, or will you recognize them as revelation? To ignore them is to walk blindly. To embrace them is to walk in alignment with the one who sends them. And now, I ask you to mark this moment, not with doubt, not with hesitation, but with declaration. Write in the comments, I see. Why these words? Because when you say, I see, you are choosing to acknowledge that what has been happening is not luck or coincidence, but God Himself reaching into your life. It is your way of saying, I refuse to walk blind. I recognize your voice. Lord, the awakening has already begun. Your eyes are opening. Your spirit is attuned. And when a chosen one declares, I see, the fog lifts, and the path forward becomes clear. This simple phrase is not casual, it is prophetic. It's not about eyesight, but insight. Not about physical vision, but spiritual recognition. Saying, I see, is a way of stepping into alignment with heaven's guidance. Declaring that you will no longer dismiss signs as random, but embrace them as divine messages carrying direction for your destiny. There is a tension you've felt in your spirit, the pull between covenant and convenience. Covenant is the deep. Yes, you give to God, even when it costs something. Convenience is the shallow agreement you make only when it feels easy. One builds crowns, the other leaves you empty, and every chosen one must decide which road to walk. Think about marriage. It is not built on convenience, but covenant. Vows are not taken only for sunny days. They are made to weather storms, sickness, and trials. Covenant endures when convenience walks away. Your walk with God mirrors this picture. He is not calling you to a faith that shifts with feelings, but to a devotion that anchors you, no matter the weather. The Word of God declares in the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 15, But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. This is the cry of covenant, a firm decision, not swayed by shifting trends or the passing approval of people. When Joshua spoke those words, he knew the weight. They were not sentimental, but binding. That is the beauty of covenant. It shapes who you are, not just what you do. Now, picture a tree planted by a river through drought. Its leaves remain green because its roots are not shallow. They reach into the stream beneath. Convenience is like shallow roots. They look fine until the sun grows harsh. Covenant, however, keeps you alive through every season. That is why your calling cannot survive on convenience alone. It must be rooted in covenant with God. I remember hearing of a man who followed Christ only when life was easy. He sang in church, prayed when he felt good, and showed up when his schedule was free. But when storms came, he fell away, bitter and hardened. Another man, though, chose covenant. He stayed through nights of tears, through questions without answers, through seasons of scarcity, and when the storm broke, his roots were stronger. His testimony became an anchor for others. That is the difference between convenience and covenant. One collapses, the other carries. You know this struggle in your own life. There have been times you've been tempted to water down your obedience because it was easier than surrender. But deep down, you've always known you were made for more than shallow faith. The covenant tug has never let you go. Think of a violin string. If it is too loose, it makes no sound. If it is tightened just right, it produces beautiful music. Covenant is that tension. It feels weighty, but it is the only way your life can play. The song God wrote for you, and here, I extend to you not a demand, but an invitation. Think of this message as a candle being passed into your hands. You can keep it to yourself, letting the flame flicker quietly, or you can lift it, let others see, and light more candles along the way. That is what happens when you like, when you share, when you subscribe. It is not about numbers or algorithms, it is about flames uniting into a bonfire. Liking is placing your small spark with others. Sharing is handing the torch to someone still walking in the dark. Subscribing is choosing to stay close to the fire so it never dies in you. This is not pressure, it is beauty. A voluntary act of covenant with your own calling. The choice is always yours. Covenant or convenience. Rooted tree or shallow soil. A violin string tuned to heaven's melody or slackened into silence. You were not made for halfway faith. You were made for a covenant that endures, and a fire that spreads. The shaking you feel around you is not chaos without purpose. It is the hand of God dismantling what cannot remain, removing the structures that no longer serve your destiny. Shaking is unsettling. It makes you question everything. But shaking is also holy. It is heaven's way of clearing away what was never meant to stand, so that only the eternal remains. You may feel as if the very ground under you is unstable. What once felt secure no longer holds. Relationships, habits, even mindsets you trusted are being torn apart. Yet this is not punishment, it is preparation. God shakes foundations so that your life will no longer lean on what is temporary, but on what is unshakable. The Apostle wrote in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 27, the words once more indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. No. Think of a building under construction. Before the new structure rises, the old must be demolished. Dust fills the air, noisy-cool, and it seems destructive. But only when the rubble is cleared can the foundation be laid strong enough to support what is coming. That is your life right now. The shaking is demolition, not destruction. It is God making room for what will last. I remember a story of a woman who felt as though everything was falling apart. Her job ended, friendships shifted, and the plans she built collapsed in months. At first, she thought she had failed, but in hindsight, she saw the truth. God was shaking her loose from what was too small. The new path he opened required courage she would never have found if her old life had stayed intact. Shaking is never comfortable, but it is always purposeful. Like a tree in autumn losing its leaves. It may look barren, but the roots are going deeper. God allows some things to fall so that hidden strength can grow within you. Another image, a sieve used to separate wheat from chaff. The shaking may feel violent, but its purpose is to reveal the grain that is worth keeping. Without shaking, the wheat and the waste remain mixed. The same is true of your life. Shaking separates what is eternal from what is disposable. There are seasons when God removes voices around you, You may feel abandoned, but in truth, He is silencing distractions so His whisper becomes clear again. There are moments when resources dry up. You may feel punished, but in truth, He is teaching you to trust provision that doesn't depend on the world. Every shake is a lesson. What can fall away must not be the anchor of your soul. The shaking also tests faith, like a bridge under stress. Cracks reveal weaknesses, but only then can repairs be made, ensuring the structure stands strong when real weight comes. That is why you've been tested. It is God revealing what needs reinforcement before destiny lays heavier responsibility on your shoulders. So do not despise the shaking. Do not curse the winds that rattle your branches. This is not collapse. It is cleansing. It is not the end. It is transition. And though everything around you seems uncertain, the foundation of Christ beneath you is firm, unmovable, and eternal. You will look back and realize the shaking did not break you, it built you. And what remains after this season will be stronger, purer, and unshakable. There are turning points in life that feel heavier than others. Moments where you sense in your spirit that you are standing at a prophetic crossroads. This is one of those moments. You are not wandering without direction. You have been guided here because heaven wants you to recognize the weight of this intersection. At a crossroads, the path you choose doesn't just affect your today, it shapes your tomorrow. It influences who you become, the lives you touch, and the legacy you leave. This is why the Lord slows you down at critical moments. He will not let you rush past destiny. The ancient words recorded in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 16, speak clearly. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to Him, and to keep His commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. And notice how the verse emphasizes today, not someday, not when life feels convenient. At a crossroads, delay is as dangerous as disobedience. The choice must be made while the door of opportunity is open. Think of a traveler approaching a fork in the road. One path looks smooth and easy, winding gently into the distance. The other is narrow, rocky, and steep. At first glance, comfort draws the heart toward the wide road. But only the narrow road leads to the summit, where vision is clear and destiny is fulfilled. This is the decision before you now. I recall a young man who felt this same tension. He stood between pursuing quick success or walking a slower, sacrificial path with God. Everything in him wanted the easy way, but he couldn't shake the feeling that compromise would cost too much. He chose the harder road, and though it was lonely at first, years later, he testified that the narrow path brought rewards far greater than he imagined. That is what it means to stand at a prophetic crossroads. The choice may not feel glamorous. It may even feel hidden, but heaven records it, and your future unfolds according to it. Another image, a key placed in your hand. One door opens into temporary pleasure, the other into lasting purpose. You cannot unlock both. The key must turn in one direction. That is why this moment matters. Your decision is not small, it is prophetic. So here is your step of faith. Mark this moment by writing the number 888 inches the comments. Let it be your sign of alignment, your way of saying, I choose the path of new beginnings. I choose covenant over convenience. I choose life. And why 888? Because in the language of faith, it symbolizes new beginnings beyond completion, stepping into what only God can author. By typing it, you are not just entering digits, you are declaring that this crossroads will not be wasted. You are choosing the road heaven is pointing you toward. This is your defining moment. Do not fear the steep climb. Do not long for the wide road. Choose the path of destiny, and heaven itself will walk with you. And when you take that step, understand this: your choice is not only about you, it ripples outward, shaping generations after you, influencing families, communities, even nations. A single yes at the crossroads becomes a seed that grows into a tree of life for others to rest under. That is why your decision carries eternal weight. It is heaven's way of writing history through your obedience. There is a silence more dangerous than words of rebellion, the silence of ignoring what God has already spoken. It is one thing to wrestle with doubt or cry out in confusion. Those sounds still reach heaven. But to hear his call and remain unmoved, to bury conviction beneath distraction, that silence has a cost. Think of a lamp left unlit in a dark room. It has the potential to brighten everything, yet its flame remains unused. Dust gathers, the wick dries out, the oil evaporates. That is what happens to a gift ignored. It does not vanish. Overnight, it withers slowly until it is no longer ready when needed. The Apostle Paul warned his spiritual son Timothy with these words, recorded in the second letter, chapter 1, verse 6. For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. Notice the urgency. A flame left unattended does not stay strong. It fades. And Paul was saying, do not let silence and neglect choke out the very thing God placed in you. There was once a young woman who carried a powerful voice for worship. As a child, she sang with passion, sensing God's presence every time she lifted her voice. But fear of rejection made her hide. She stopped singing, convincing herself someone else was better. Years passed, and the opportunities to lead seemed fewer. It wasn't that her gift disappeared, it was that silence hardened her heart. Only when she dared to step forward again did she realize the flame could still be fanned. Her story is a reminder. Silence steals more than words. It steals seasons. Another image, a vineyard left untended. In its early years, the vines can survive without much care. But over time, weeds creep in, branches grow tangled, and fruit stops appearing. The vineyard's potential is wasted, not because it lacked design, but because it lacked cultivation. So it is with the calling of God without tending, without obedience. The vineyard of your life produces less than it was meant to. This is why the Spirit presses you now. If you ignore the voice stirring in your heart, if you convince yourself there will always be more time, you risk becoming numb. The tragedy is not just missed opportunities, it is losing the sensitivity to hear him at all. Consider Saul, the first king of Israel. His story is sobering. Called, anointed, and gifted, he began strong, but repeated disobedience and excuses hardened his heart. When God spoke, Saul stopped listening. Eventually, the silence became permanent. God's voice departed, and Saul was left to his own devices. His downfall was not a sudden collapse. but a slow erosion of attention to God's voice. Do not let that become your story. If you feel the weight of conviction, that is mercy proof that God is still speaking. But conviction left unanswered becomes a fading echo. The cost of silence is not just a quiet moment, it is a destiny delayed and sometimes lost. So take this warning as a gift. The silence you choose today shapes the harvest you reap tomorrow. Let your life be a vineyard tended, a flame fanned, a voice lifted. Do not allow the gift to wither unused, because the world is waiting for what God placed in you. You were never meant to carry the fire, only for yourself. The mark upon your life is generational. The torch in your hand was given so that others may find their way, so that light multiplies beyond your own circle. This is the essence of being a torchbearer. You are both vessel and messenger, carrying something greater than yourself. From the earliest stories of Scripture, God has chosen people not just for personal blessing, but for the sake of nations. Abraham was promised descendants like the stars, not merely to comfort his loneliness, but to birth a covenant family that would bless the earth. In the same way, the mark on you is not a private treasure. It is a seed meant to grow into a harvest that others will eat from. The prophet Isaiah spoke of this, calling to shine in dark places, declaring in chapter 60, verse 1, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." Hallelujah. To arise and shine is not a suggestion, it is a command. It means the light inside you is not optional decor for your life. It is a responsibility entrusted to you. Picture a relay race. One runner sprints forward, holding the baton with all their strength. But victory is not won unless the baton is passed. You are a runner in that relay. What you have been carrying, your lessons, your resilience, your faith is not only for your finish line. It must be handed forward so others can continue the race. I recall the story of a teacher who spent years pouring into just a handful of students. She sometimes wondered if her labor mattered. Hidden in a small classroom, far from recognition, years later, those students rose into leadership, carrying with them the seeds she had sown. Her legacy lived in their decisions, their words, their courage. She was a torchbearer, even when she didn't see flames spreading in her lifetime. Being a torchbearer often feels costly. It means walking ahead into places others fear, so that they can follow with confidence. It means carrying weight others don't understand, so that they may inherit strength you already paid for. It means pressing through nights of prayer and tears, not just for yourself, but for children, families, and strangers who will benefit from your obedience. Think of a lighthouse built on a dangerous coastline. The builder does not live in every ship that sails past. He never meets every crew saved by that light. Yet his labor keeps lives from shattering on the rocks. That is what it means to be a torchbearer. Much of your impact you may never see, but the light you carry prevents shipwrecks in lives you'll never touch directly. There was a woman who prayed faithfully for her family. Year after year, her children wandered. Her husband resisted. Her prayers seemed unanswered. Still, she carried the torch in silence. Decades later, after she passed, her prayers bore fruit. Her children found faith. Her grandchildren rose to preach, and her quiet torch illuminated generations beyond her lifetime. That is the hidden power of carrying light faithfully. Do not underestimate what burns in you. It is more than enough for yourself. It was meant to be shared, multiplied, passed down. You are part of a chain of torchbearers, stretching from ancient prophets to present-day believers, all carrying the same flame of God's glory. So stand tall, carry the torch, even if it feels heavy, even if your hands shake, even if no one claps, for in your obedience, others will find their way, and long after your race is run, your flame will keep burning in those who saw its light. Every chosen life carries both a crown and a cross. The two are never separated. The crown speaks of glory, honor, and destiny fulfilled. The cross speaks of surrender, sacrifice, and obedience that costs something deep. And you, as one set apart, are called to walk holding both. The crown by itself is attractive. Everyone wants it. To be seen, celebrated, lifted up. But without the cross, the crown becomes hollow. It is the cross that shapes the head strong enough to carry the crown. It is surrender that gives glory its weight. Scripture records in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 24, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me." This is the paradox of being chosen. You do not run from weight, you embrace it, knowing it leads to eternal reward. You do not chase crowns the world offers, you bow beneath the cross that heaven assigns. Imagine a sculptor working on marble. At first, the stone looks ordinary, just a heavy block, but every strike of the chisel removes what does not belong, until slowly, a crown emerges from within the rock. The chisel hurts, but the beauty revealed could not exist without it. That is your life. The weight of surrender is chiseling you into one who can wear the crown of purpose. There was once a young man who dreamed of influence. He thought leadership meant applause. But when hardship came, when friendships broke, when tears fell at midnight, he almost gave up. Then he learned the cross was not punishment, it was preparation. Years later, he stepped into the very position he once longed for, but with humility and wisdom he could never have carried before. The cross gave him depth. The crown finally fit. You have felt the heaviness of the cross in your own way. The isolation, the misunderstood seasons, the prayers answered with silence. These are not signs of abandonment, they are markings of preparation. Every chosen one must pass through the fire of surrender before stepping into the throne of destiny. Think of a seed again, buried in darkness, crushed by soil, seemingly forgotten. But that burial is what makes roots grow. Without it, there is no tree, no fruit, no harvest. The cross is your burial. The crown is your harvest. And now, here is the beauty of your response. I will not demand it. I will simply extend it as invitation. Picture a garden at dusk, filled with lanterns waiting to be lit. Each lantern represents a life touched by this word. When you choose to like, you light one lantern, adding to the glow. When you share, you take your lantern and hang it high on a post, so that travelers on dark roads may see their way. When you subscribe, you decide to remain in the garden, walking among the lights, returning again and again, so the glow never fades. And when you comment, you leave a mark like carving your name on a stone bench in the garden, your presence remembered, your voice joining the chorus. This is not pressure. This is beauty. a voluntary act of adding your flame to a field of lights, a choice that says, I will not hide my lantern. I will place it where others can see. End quote. So wear your crown with humility, carry your cross with courage, and let your light join the lights of others, until the whole night sky becomes a garden of fire, and generations after you walk in the glow you helped create, your future has been written with ink that cannot fade. Long before you knew your name, long before you took your first breath, God etched your story onto the scrolls of heaven. And though life's storms have tried to blur those lines, they remain intact. You are walking toward a destiny that is unstoppable, not because of your strength, but because of His word spoken over you. Yet, the truth is sobering. What is written cannot be erased by the enemy, but it can be resisted by your own rebellion. God has given you the dignity of choice. That is why the stakes feel so high. You carry a script of glory, but it requires your obedience to unfold. The Apostle Paul wrote in the book of Romans, chapter 11, verse 29, for God's gifts and His call are irrevocable. The call does not vanish when you stumble. The gift does not dissolve when you fail. Even in your wandering, the voice of destiny lingers, pulling you back towards alignment. The danger is not that God will change His mind. The danger is that you will refuse to step into what is already yours. Think of a river flowing toward the sea. Rocks may divert its path. Storms may churn its waters. But the river never forgets where it is headed. Your life is that river. The currents of destiny are pulling you toward an ocean of fulfillment. Yet, if you build dams of disobedience, the water stalls, pools, and grows stagnant. Only when you release the blockages can the river flow as intended. I recall a man who ran from his calling for years. Every time the whisper came, he buried it beneath busyness. Et poursuivre success. Relationships, distractions, anything but obedience. But no matter what he achieved, emptiness followed him. Finally, after decades, he surrendered. And when he did, it was as if the dam burst. Life flowed again. Doors opened. Peace returned. His story testifies. The call never left him. It simply waited. Another image, a compass. No matter how many times you spin it, the needle always points north. You may ignore it. You may walk the opposite direction, but the compass never lies. The calling of God is your compass. Even when you resist, it points you back to true north, urging you to realign. Your unstoppable future is not about avoiding pain. It is about finding meaning within it. The hardships you endured were not detours, they were shaping. The tears you shed were not wasted, they watered the soil of character. The nights of silence were not abandonment. They were training you to trust what is written rather than what you feel. The prophet Habakkuk was told to write the vision clearly so that a runner may read it and not faint. That same principle holds for you. Heaven has written your vision with clarity. You may not see every detail yet, but the essence is this: you are chosen to shine, to endure, to overcome, and to leave a mark that echoes beyond your lifetime. So do not be afraid of the battles ahead. Your story is not fragile. It is carved into eternity. The winds may howl, the storms may rage, but what is written over you is unshakable. The question is not whether your destiny will prevail, it will. The question is whether you will align yourself fully, allowing the river to flow freely, the compass to guide faithfully, and the scroll of your life to be read in all its fullness. Your future is unstoppable. Step into it. Trust it. Live it. For heaven has already declared, the call upon you cannot be revoked. There is a seal that comes when God calls someone his own. It is not visible ink on the skin, nor is it a badge worn for show. It is fire pressed into your spirit, branding you as chosen. You may not always feel it, but the mark remains. That seal carries both weight and wonder, responsibility and glory. Throughout Scripture, those who carried this seal walked with a different presence. Moses came down from the mountain, and his face shone, so much that people trembled. Esther stepped into the throne room, carrying courage beyond herself. Paul bore scars from persecution, yet spoke with authority that transformed nations. Their seal was not comfort, it was fire. The apostle wrote in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 1, verse 22, he set his seal of ownership on us and put his spirit in our hearts as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. This is not symbolic language. It is reality. To be sealed is to be claimed, to be owned, to be filled with a spirit that cannot be extinguished. It is heaven saying, this one is mine. No, imagine a craftsman creating pottery. Once the vessel is complete, he presses his personal mark into the clay before it hardens. That mark identifies the pot as his work, bearing his reputation. In the same way, God has pressed his mark into you. You are not mass-produced. You are not anonymous. You carry his signature. Consider the story of Daniel, taken into exile. Surrounded by a foreign culture, he could have blended in, hidden his faith, silenced his devotion. Yet the seal of God within him made him stand apart. He prayed when it was dangerous. He refused the food that defiled. And because he honored the seal, kings recognized the hand of heaven upon him. His story is a mirror of your own calling, to live marked, even when the world pulls you to compromise. The seal is not only about identity, it is about mission. Fire does not rest. Quietly, it spreads. The spirit within you compels you to move, to speak, to shine. You were not sealed to sit in silence. You were sealed to carry heaven's atmosphere into places others fear to go. Think of wax pressed by a king's signet ring to close a decree. That seal carried authority. No one dared to break it, because it represented the will of the throne. So too with you. The seal on your life is not fragile. It is backed by the authority of the King of Kings. Darkness may rage, but it cannot break what God has sealed. There was once a woman who doubted her worth. She compared herself constantly, convinced she had nothing special. But one day, in prayer, she felt the Spirit whisper, I have set my seal upon you. That single moment shifted everything. She no longer lived for applause. She lived from identity. Her life became a testimony of quiet strength, and others found courage through her confidence in God's mark. You are sealed by fire. That fire will not fade with time or circumstance. It will burn in valleys and on mountaintops, in obscurity and in influence. To be chosen is not to escape struggle. It is to endure with a flame that never goes out. So walk forward with this assurance. You are marked. You are sealed. You are a bearer of fire, a vessel of glory, a carrier of God's own signature. And nothing in this world, nor in the world to come, can erase what heaven has written upon you. Chosen one. The journey of these words has brought you face to face with your calling. You have seen the weight of silence, the fire of trials, the beauty of covenant, and the unstoppable future written over your life. And now, you stand not as a wanderer, but as one marked, sealed, and chosen. But remember this, the seal on your life is not just about you. It is about every soul you will touch, every heart that will be awakened because you carried your flame. When one chosen rises, others find the courage to rise too. That is why your response matters. Think of it like a river flowing into the sea. One stream alone may look small, but when many streams converge, they form a current strong enough to reshape the land. That is what happens when chosen ones come together, when each one adds their yes, their light, their voice. And here is the invitation. When you like, it is like casting a stone into the river, creating ripples that touch shores you will never see. When you share, it is like opening a gate, letting the water flow freely into dry places where thirst has gone unquenched for too long. When you subscribe, it is like returning again and again to the river's edge, drawing from its flow, so your spirit never runs dry. And when you comment, it is as if you carve your name into the riverbank, leaving a mark that says, I was here. I chose to flow with what heaven is doing. Oh, this is not duty. This is beauty. A voluntary act of stepping into the current, of allowing your life to join the great river of chosen ones, until together we become a flood of light, washing over darkness with glory. So step into the river, add your ripple. Let your life flow with heaven's stream,